Good evening. I am Glynda Carr, one of the co-founders of Higher Heights for America, and thank you for joining us this evening for our Black Women Lead Political Leadership Webinar Series, Author Talkback editions. We are going to get started shortly. We're just waiting for some of your fellow attendees to join on. So again, good evening. I am Glynda Carr, one of the co-founders of Higher Heights for America, a national organization building the political power of Black women from the voting booth to elective office. Thank you for joining us tonight for our hashtag Black Women Lead Political Webinar Series. This fall, we have kicked off an author talkback. So for those who follow us, this summer we released the Chisholm 50 Summer Reading List as part of our Chisholm 50 celebration of Chisholm's 50th anniversary of being sworn in as the first Black woman to serve in Congress. And so in celebrating her amazing unbought leadership, we have been releasing lists of 50 Black women. The first list were 50 Black elected women who we should be following. This summer, we released 50 Black women authors in a summer reading list. And so you had the summer to read, the summer to buy and not read, or like me, a summer to download on Audible books. And so this fall, for the next, I believe, 5 weeks, we will be having talkbacks with some amazing Black women authors talking about Black women in politics, Black women and leadership, and we are excited that you have joined us this evening. For those who don't know who Higher Heights is, we're the political home for Black women, a space where we can be informed, engage, and to take action, a space where our inspiring allies can support and engage and amplify the amazing leadership of Black women from the voting booth to elected office. So when Kimberly Peeler Allen and I co-founded Higher Heights in 2012 in a Brooklyn cafe, we envisioned building a space where Black women can harness our political power in a way where we can see more of us in elected office, for us to harness our votes in a way that will move this country forward, to move forward policies that directly affect Black women, our families, and our communities. And so we are excited that, 8 years later, we have, together with members like you and hopefully those who've joined us for the first time, to help elect the largest number of Black women serving in Congress. We've helped to expand the number of Black women serving in top 100 mayor cities from just one elected and serving in top 100 major cities in 2014 to 7. And we've steadily increased the number of Black women serving on statewide executive office. But there's still a lot of work to be done, and we each have a role to play. And that's what these webinar series are. It is an opportunity for us to gather across the country collectively online. You may be, let me start with, if you're on the video, there is a chat room. And if you are calling in and listening, there's a phone number for you to be engaged. It is 646-206-5931. So roll call for us. Where are you logging in or calling from? What I love about this webinar series is that literally we are dialing in and logging in from all over the country, and probably in a variety of ways. I'm currently in my office, in my home, and some of you may be still in the office. You may be at a cafe. You may be in your pajamas. You may be cooking dinner. You may be cleaning. So this webinar series, it's literally just an hour of your life, but a powerful hour for us to connect as Black women and our supporters in a way that will hopefully engage and inspire women thinking about running for office, inspiring and informing women currently running for office. And frankly, just like me, it is Black women across this country that want to amplify and engage our power in a way that helps to move this country to higher heights. So during these webinars, we encourage you to share on social media by using our hashtag Black Women Lead, and tag Higher Heights, and that's at Higher Heights on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram. It's at Higher Heights in the number 4. And our author tonight, Karine Jean-Pierre, and she's at K_Jean-Pierre, JEANPIERRE. And please tag me at Glynda Carr, GLYNDA. When we open up the conversation, we will have some time to do a few questions and answers with Karine. And so if you are logged on and watching us, you can put your question in the attendee chat room, which is up to the left of your screen. And if you're listening via phone, you can again text 646-206-5931. So I'm so excited to introduce you to Karine Jean-Pierre for a variety of reasons. She is not only a friend, a fellow New Yorker, although she's a real New Yorker. I'm a transplant, and actually a founding member. There's a little theme here. Last week, Stacey Abrams was on, and she's also a founding member of Higher Heights. And so we're so excited to kind of engage Karine, because her book is not even out. So don't feel guilty if you haven't read the book, because we are getting a snapshot of a book that's not even out yet. And so the goal here is for us to, she'll share a little bit how you can support the book, but like I have my own physical copy because she sent me an advanced copy. So who is Karine Jean-Pierre? She, again, has an upcoming book called Moving Forward, which comes out in November. And she is a Haitian-American political professional with a wide range of activism, from grassroots activism to presidential campaigns to local elections. She's worked at the White House. You may have seen her because she is a contributor on MSNBC as a political analyst. And in addition to that, she is also the chief political affairs officer for Move On. Previously to that, she has been a deputy campaign manager for Martin O'Malley's presidential run. Prior to the O'Malley campaign in 2014, she was the campaign manager for ACLU's Reproductive Freedom Institute initiative. And prior to this is where I know her. She helped to elect Tish James as the New York public advocate, which helped to catapult her to be the first Black woman to serve as the New York State Attorney General. She has a long history of working on campaigns, including in 2011, she served as the Deputy Battleground States Director for President Obama's 2012 re-election campaign. Prior to that, she was a regional political director for the White House of Political Affairs during the Obama administration, and has served in a variety of capacities. And she is also a visiting fellow and a lecturer at a variety of academic institutions, including this year joining she is a faculty member at Columbia University. So please welcome Karine Jean-Pierre.
Hey! Thank you so much, Glynda. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. Hey, everybody. I'm downstairs in my basement. That's where I am.
The basement scene. We got someone from South Carolina.
Hey, South Carolina. I love South Carolina. I lived in Columbia, South Carolina during the 2007 presidential.
So this book is part memoir, part instruction manual. It will be, I think, one of our guides to making sense of this, when I say long presidential election cycle ahead of us. So can you share a little bit how you approached writing this book?
Yeah.
What was the goal? what did you
Yeah.
want the reader to walk away with?
Yeah, can I first say thank you so much to Glenda and Kimberly for giving us this space, Higher Heights. I am in awe of Higher Heights. I remember the first event that I attended, I think was in Washington, D.C. Can't remember what job I had at the time, but I was in Washington, D.C. And I remember thinking after that event, I'm like, I'm giving money. And I gave like, gave my little bit of money and was really, I got to give you guys more money. I haven't done that in a while. So please
You'll
give
be
to
getting a
Higher Heights.
call.
I know I'm going to be getting a call, but yeah, I'm always in awe on what you ladies are able to do, bring us together, give us the space, always elevating all of us. And I know this is not easy work to do, and so I appreciate this time. I appreciate the moment that you've given me, and I appreciate everybody for jumping on. Look, moving forward is was a labor of love. I wrote it. It was a 3-year project. I've always wanted to write a book, like in the back of my head, I've always wanted to write a book. And then after the election of 2016, I was like, I got to write this book. And there's a couple of reasons why. One of them is I teach at Columbia University. I've been teaching at Columbia University for the last 6 years. And the class that I teach is called campaign management. And I get asked by students all the time, well, how did you get to the White House? How did you get there? How did you get there? So I always thought, okay, I want to write that story. And then clearly after the election of November 2016, there were so many people who felt like down and who didn't feel like they knew what to do, and they were trying to figure out what happened. And there were folks, as we know, and women in particular, who wanted to get more involved in the political process. So this book tells my story of how I got to the White House and my path. And then it also mirrors, it also brings together how to politically get engaged, how to get involved in the political process. If you've never thought about it, if you finally something click and you're like, I want to get involved, or if you feel like the time is so dire and you're trying to figure out what to do, well, getting politically involved is a way to stop the madness and be part of the solution if you're looking for that. And so that's kind of what it is. It's like a call to action along with my story. And I wanted to also, just to go back to my story for a second, I wanted to go back to my story because, like I said, so many students, so many people ask me how I got there. And I always tell them that there is no single path. And that everybody has their own path. I just happened to find mine in this way. And I started much later in the game. And it's very hard to break into the political world because, as we know, it's very white male oriented. It's hard to break through. It's hard to be around that strategy table. And you always constantly have to fight. You have to have a longer, bigger resume than everybody else. It's just it's really exhausting. And so I wanted to tell that story and basically let people know that you can do it too. You just got to figure out what your path is, and my path is not your path, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of was the gist of it. And telling that immigrant story, telling the Black woman story, and just kind of it really gives you some flavor of who I am, and it has so many facets and I think people can connect with the stories that I tell and the different kind of, I feel like, personas that I occupy, and communities that I occupy, that it really, I think, touches. I hope it touches people in a really
Yeah.
personal way, and also just engages and excites people at the same time.
So not giving too much of the book away because we want people to go out and get it
Yes.
and delve in it. But the book chronicles, as you mentioned, your pathway from being a first generation American born Haitian to your work at the White House. And it offers, as you mentioned, a blueprint for anyone who wants to change the face of politics. Can you just share, one or two stories about stories in your life that impacted your decision to take this pathway to helping to strengthen our democracy?
That's such a good question. I mean, it's so funny because um, I kind of the getting into politics was just kind of, I just ended up that way in a weird way. Like I went to got a master's. I met David Dickens, who's the first African American mayor of New York City, as all of you know, and it kind of just fell into a space where I got into politics. But I have to tell you, I think what has happened the most recently, the last 3 years, has really forced me to be more engaged, because of the person I got elected into the White House, or the person that isn't in the White House, I should say. And it got me to want to be more engaged and more politically active and more like becoming more of a activist, if you will. I think that's where I really stepped into that world of activism and working for Move On, and leading rallies, speaking at rallies, getting people engaged. And so it's really, interestingly enough, even though I've had jobs that where I've helped people, I've written policies, I've done legislations, I've worked in politics, I've knocked on doors. There's something about this last couple of years that has kind of taking me to another level, another place in the space of activism, and a lot of it is just because of what we've been under, especially under this president. But to be clear, we've been fighting this kind of fight for a long time. This institutional racism, this kind of, the bigotry, the misogyny, and all of this has been around a long time. But it's been these last 3 years that I've really stepped into the world of activism in a more public way.
Yeah, and I would share, when talking about going back to 2016. So in 2016, Higher Heights, through our nonpartisan Black Women Vote program, decided to do conversations at both the Republican National Convention, which was in Cleveland, Ohio, and the Democratic National Convention, which was in, this actually might have been, was this like longer, like further ago? No, it had to be. And we were in Philadelphia. So you came to Cleveland with us.
Oh, I sure did. That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was at
What
a time,
college?
remember that
What
we were
college
at
were we
Columbia
at?
College.
Was it a
And so,
HBCU?
no, I think it was one of the
No,
state
state college.
universities.
Okay.
But if you remember, it was all this heightened security
Yeah.
during both of the conventions, but particularly the Cleveland convention, because
People walking around
Ohio
with
is an
guns.
open carry state.
Mhm.
And so we ended up, not even thinking. We were like, oh, we're all going to Cleveland. And it became this whole, it's not going to be safe, don't go. And we just flew in like, we're going because we want to convene
Yeah.
Black women around the presidential.
Yeah.
And you sat on that stage just talking about the importance of Black women and being engaged in politics in a way that I think was bold and important to show that, in face of, one of the probably, we were moving into the most politically toxic and racially divisive times in our generation.
Our generation, yeah, absolutely.
That we boldly stood at that university, ready to convene Black women to talk about our political power. And then, since then, everybody else has, known what we've all known, which is,
Right.
Our democracy, the foundation to our democracy. Black women are a major piece of that. And so you talk a little bit about in this book that, we each have a role to play. So oftentimes these webinar talks about Black women running for office, considering running for office. And that's just one way for us to engage in the political process. Can you share two things? I think you touched upon it a little bit. Like, what was your first intersection into being engaged in our democracy? And then the second piece is your book is rooted on making politics accessible to everybody. And I think in this political environment, that is more important. So, like, what was your kind of first engagement in politics? May it be from, voting for the first time to, whatever your story may be. And then the second piece is, for all of us, how do we make being engaged in our democracy more accessible?
Yeah, that's such a two really great question. I mean, my first real involvement in politics was more issue based, and I had a huge interest going before I went into getting my master's into environmental justice, environmental racism. And so that's kind of the space where I became more politically aware, more involved in my activism. And I wanted to do more research and really study about what that all was. And I worked for an organization where I was able to work with young women and kind of get their brains and their minds going on what was going on in their community and how to get involved. So that was more an issue base, but it was part of like the activism that kind of started bubbling up for me. And then after I graduated from my master's, that's when I decided to jump fully into politics. And I worked for a city council member. I ended up running a campaign, all in a weird way, all kind of happenstance. I was very young running a campaign, and the council member I was working for decided that I would be the campaign manager, and kind of really jumped into political campaigns and got very involved and really got the bug. And that's when kind of the world of politics kind of blew up for me, and then realized that I could really make a difference in this space by having a voice, by being at the table, and by people seeing more of us, more campaign managers, more Black women that can actually run the table and convene the table as well, which is what I ended up doing. I ended up, working with consultants that had to listen to me. I ended up, putting up together a strategy, and I was pretty young. I was in my kind of like in my mid-20s running this campaign that I had never done before. And so that's kind of how I really developed my skill and got involved in campaigns, and then wanted to get on a presidential and all of that. I don't even remember. I wish I remember the first time I voted, but I actually can't remember but it was really running my first campaign that got me really involved in politics. But how to find our political power? Look, we in the book I talk about the most important thing that we have to do is vote. And I don't need to tell Black women that. Black women understand that. So it's like I feel like I'm speaking to the choir here, and it's not Black women that needs to hear this. I think that as we've seen over and over and over again, we are the most reliable group of voters, and we come out not just for us, we come out for everybody else, our community, our home, our folks in our home and our community, and we understand what it means to be represented in that way, and our vote matters. So it's not even that. It's more of like, it's more of like, how do we make sure people in our community vote? How do we transcend that? How do we transfer like how our understanding of voting to everybody else, to our whole household, to our community? And that's the thing that's still kind of hard to do, that's hard to break, that's hard to penetrate. So what I write about in my book, I write about like the things that are happening right now, and if we don't vote, then we're going to be in a big bind. And I talk about voting rights and how our vote is so powerful that they're trying to take it away from us, right? I mean, that's what they're doing. And so I talk about that, and I talk about the important issues of the day that we constantly talk about, and just the importance of just getting out there and using our political voice. If it's not running for office, then it's making sure that we're being an activist and making sure that we're getting people to register and vote, right? Or picking that candidate that we're really pushing and supporting. I always push women to run for office, because I think Black women are the best are the best people we can have in office, because they understand all facets of our community, all facets of the world, and understands like what it means to lift up our community and what it means to move us forward. And so I always encourage people to run, especially Black women.
That's exactly what we need to do. We've seen a steady increase in Black women running and winning, but more importantly, we see them leading.
Yeah.
It's not about electing Black women for Black women's sake. It shows that when we elect Black women, they hold not only the interest of Black women in our communities, but the nation. So my question, since you were deeply rooted in talking about Black women, is answer this quick question. Tell us why you are a Black woman who leads.
Wow, that's a good question. I am a Black woman that leads because I have a platform and I have a voice, and I use that. Besides the fact that I have a voice, but I have a platform that I use in a way that I'm hoping that's lifting people up in my community. That's hoping that I'm giving a voice to people in my community, and so I have a voice as a chief public affairs officer for Move On, where I lead rallies, where I'm in the room on strategy. I have a voice when I'm on TV and a platform when I'm on TV, and I get to be, on primetime television or on one of the, flagship Monday or Tuesday, whatever, weekday shows. And I'm able to talk about issues where if I wasn't there, those issues wouldn't be brought up. I'm a Black woman that lead because I get to stand in front of 25 to 30 students every spring at Columbia University and tell them what it's like to run a campaign and what it's like to be a leader in the field of political campaigns. And they get to see a Black woman talking about that. And they get to know that it's not just a white man's game. It's like it's also a woman's game, a Black woman's game, a woman of color's game. And so I feel like I have these avenues, these platforms that help me be a leader, and that help me give voice to important issues. And so I think that's why I'm a Black woman that leads. I think because I use those platforms and as a leader, and I think people see me, and it's great when you have a platform where people see you and you use it in a positive light. Then hopefully you're bringing other people along with you, and I think that's really important and key. And we have to continue to do that for each other.
Well, one, thank you for leading, but also I think it is bold for us to be able to amplify our voice and share our stories, and sometimes that's hard. So we appreciate you putting pen to paper and not only write about strategy, but also be able to talk about your journey as a Black woman. Gonna take some questions, so prepare. If you have a question to ask, again, if you are watching and logged in, watching the webinar, you can go into the attendee chat and leave a question, or you can text 646-202-5931. 646-226. This is why I don't know my number. 646-202-5931. And so you brought up something that is an important piece of your story, and it's something we talked about earlier, which is, Higher Heights is in the process of kind of doing what we're calling a census of the Black women that are working on presidential campaigns, and I think we anecdotally know that there are a record number of Black women working on presidential campaigns, but frankly, a record number of them in leadership roles. And so like the pioneers of, Donna Brazile, who literally was the first Black woman campaign manager, to your roles on not only one, but three presidential campaigns, about how do we ensure that we, the way you shape a democracy is, yes, having seats at decision-making tables in our state legislatures and our city councils and our executive branches, but it is also making sure we have seats at our tables behind the scenes. The notion of the hidden figures. Black women have historically been the hidden figures in politics. And so share a little bit about your journey from working in New York politics, like local politics, to now you not only working on presidential campaigns, but also kind of lending your voice to the national conversation and debate.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, like I said, everybody has their own path, and mine kind of doesn't make any sense, but it happened anyway. And I own it, and I'm proud of it. But yeah, it's just I think it was, I ended up working. I talk about this in the book. I ended up working in New York City Council. I became a campaign manager, kind of like on a whim. My council member decided, like I said, it wanted me to be campaign manager. And honestly, it's one of those weird things where I went to go into national politics because I didn't get a job. Because I didn't get a job, it forced me. It's a long story. You can read it in the book. But because I didn't get a job that I was hoping to get, it forced me to take a big leap and to make a big jump, and that was moving to DC, working on an issue-based organization, moving to a place I had never moved to before. I've never lived outside of New York as adult, as a child. I was lived in New York, and it forced me to make this big decision. And then I moved to DC, and when I moved to DC, um, um, I was able to kind of get that national exposure, but also relationship building. That was one of the key things that I did from New York City political days to moving to DC. A lot of this, and this is the crazy thing, right? A lot of this is, yes, you got to be talented and you got to be smart and you got to be able to, have that resume. But a lot of it is who you know and how you bolstering that Rolodex, right? That Rolodex that you should always constantly be building, and that's part of it, right? And once I got into the national political world, I was able to, to be able to like figure out, okay, 2007 is coming. I want to work on a presidential. Who can I work for? My resume got passed around, and I ended up on that very, very early on, ended up on John Edwards' campaign. And then from John Edwards' campaign, I developed tons of relationships. And so when he dropped out, so a bunch of people went over to the Obama campaign. They were like, Karine, do you want to come over to the Obama campaign? And so a lot of it is, having a great reputation or good reputation as for your work, but also developing those relationships. It is so important. It is so key. Getting those coffees, staying in touch with people, making sure that you have a strategy of as well of where you want to go. How do you want to get to not just point A to B, but from point A to C? Like what's going to get you to C? And that's kind of what I've always put in my head. How am I going to get to the larger goal? And it kind of just all, it was like a domino effect. It just all kind of happened doing the work and kind of, doing the retail politics, if you will. And, and that's kind of what happened. But you're so right about fast forwarding to 2020 presidential. There's an amazing group of Black folks we have Maya, who's running Julio Castro, right, campaign. We have Adisu, who's running Cory Booker's campaign, and a bunch of others in leadership roles, which is pretty amazing to see. And so that's the other thing, like lifting up people. Like I commend Julian to lift up people and say, okay, you can run my campaign. And also for Cory to say, hey, Adisu, we've worked together before. You ran my Senate campaign. I want you to run my presidential campaign. And so that is I think that's also amazing to see. But yeah, it's a lot of it is relationship building, and that helps get you into that room. But it's a lot of work, and we have to work double, triple time just to just to get to point B. We have to get to work double, triple time, and that's just the reality that we're in. But it's nice to see. It's nice to see, two Black campaign managers in this
Yeah,
election
and
cycle.
and two or three political directors.
Yeah, two or
Um,
three political
and so
directors.
you actually answered one of the questions that we had in our in text, which was about like how do you build a network. So I think you answered that question. Another question is just about the moment. We see you on MSNBC. I think every Black girl across the country screams when we see, Joy Ann and Tiffany and me,
Oh, Joy.
and giving amazing analysis, but also kind of that being able to slay it as a Black woman as well. So would love to hear the question. I'm going to combine two questions, which is in this moment, as right now the biggest discussion obviously is the Democratic primary, which has a crowded feel about how do you feel about, and we talked about this moment with the Democratic hopefuls for president.
Oh man, is this off the record?
It's being recorded and will be sent out.
Oh, man. So look, I think it's great that it's a big field and it's a diverse field, the most important, right? It is a historical democratic field. You have, and all, I'm sure I don't need to say this, but I'll say it anyway. We have like 2 African Americans, we have a Latino in the race, we have an Asian American in the race, and it's just amazing to see women, a handful of women. At least when we started, we had a handful of women in this race, and it's great to see. It's great to see the diversity. It represents who we are as a if you're a Democrat, as a Democratic base. It has been said to me, and we've talked about this, Glynda, how we haven't. There hasn't been more elevation or more attraction, really, for the candidates of color, and it's been kind of disappointing to see that. And I don't, we could go back and forth and list the reasons why for each one and what's happening and all of that. A lot of it is name ID, right? I think name ID is a huge reason why. When you have a look at the top 3, especially when you look at Joe Biden has a tons of name ID. People know him. People were comfortable with him for 8 years and called him Uncle Joe. And I think that's a big part of it. But I would love to have seen our candidates of color having, being part of that top tier. And I think that's been kind of disappointing to see.
Yep. And what we talked about is being able to celebrate the moment. Even if you are an undecided voter, or frankly with somebody that isn't one of the people of color, that, it's the 50th anniversary of Fannie Lou Hamer's testimony to the Democratic National Convention, where she brought the voices of not only Black Mississippians, but African Americans across this country about us having a say in and a equal representation in our democracy and in our party system. And so to think that fast forward 55 years, and frankly, leaps and bounds from 2008 when we made history, that you have a diverse stage, but some of it is just being like, hey, we're going to scream for scream's sake about where we are in our country's history, where you actually have more people of color and women on the stage than old white men,
which is nice to see. Yeah.
And frankly, to see the difference in ideology, right? And ideology, background, regional diversity. And so that being said, this primary season seems endless, and it's still 2019. This new American politics that we live in can be exhausting, particularly if you live in the 24-hour news cycle and online conversation about the moment we live in. And so what is your advice, both from a how do we make it day to day, to dig in as active citizens when in reality we all just want to turn it off?
That's a good question.
Is it tied into a question about then like what is absolutely at stake for Black women in this election cycle?
Yeah. It's interesting because I was just thinking as you were talking, I mean, something that we have seen, and I think it's because we are seeing a diverse stage. And you're right, we should be celebrating that. It is a major achievement and accomplishment. But in the last debate, we were able to talk about race, right? We were, I mean, not
Hmm.
for a long time, but we were able to have that came up. Talked about reparations. There was a conversation. I mean, that was, well, we could talk about the reparations conversation, but and what happened there. But it was, I don't know if that would have happened if we didn't have a diverse field. And so that should be celebrated. And that should be, we had a debate where we talked about busing. I mean, it was, we talked about criminal justice issues. We've talked about abortion rights and what that means for women. And so I think that's a good thing. Talked about issues that have never ever been touched on a presidential debate stage ever, and you saw that this time around. As far as I think, I hear a lot about self care. I'm the worst at self care, but and I'm learning. I'm learning every day. And so self care is really really important in this time of when we are under attack. Really, I mean, that's the most honest way to call it. What's
Hmm.
happening right every day, and you have to be able to step away from it. You have to be able to take care of yourself. You have to be able to give yourself mental, emotional, physical care, because it's exhausting, and also because Black women, take on so much of the emotional impact of what's happening in our communities. That's always been the case throughout history. Like, Black women just take it all on, and we take it on for everybody. And so it's important that Black women, we take care of ourselves and we take care of each other and we check in on each
Hmm.
other. That is something that I've done a lot more of in the past 3 years. I call up, a friend, and I'm just kind of, "Are you okay?" And they're like, "Yeah, I'm okay." I'm like, "All right, just checking in on you," because it's hard. It is really, really hard, and so that's what I ask of people. That's why I tell people I need to follow that myself. I'm not good at that, and so that's, I think we need that more and more, especially going into these next 13 months, almost 12 months, I guess now, um, uh, of before this election ends. It's going to get a lot uglier, a lot nastier, and so we just gotta do that. We gotta take care of each other. We gotta take care of ourselves.
Absolutely, and I think we do that in our formal networks, maybe our family, our sister girls.
Yeah.
But we want these webinars to be this type of space where we get to check in, and we may not know each other. For Karine and I, because we see the platform, we see numbers,
Yes.
but we know there are amazing, Black women and our inspiring allies that are attached to
Yeah.
those numbers. And so,
Yeah.
if you just know that, an hour of your hour of your life at 7 o'clock on some given day between now and November 2020, that you can gather in community, please, please continue to join us, but frankly, invite others in your network, because I think this is where we can be fueled up, politically fueled up, for the next 7 days or the next 30 days or the next 300 and whatever days that are left. So on her book cover, because I've got a copy, it
Yes, you
says
do.
a story of hope, hard work, and the promise of America. And
Mhm.
so the late Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, who was the first
Mhm.
Black woman elected to Congress from the
Mhm.
South,
So
had a quote,
I talk about
right,
her.
from her famous, actually another Democratic convention speech that said, "What the people want is very simple. They want an America as good as its promise." So share a little
Yep.
bit about the promise of America, what you've written as the promise
It's
of
so
America.
interesting because that is in my book. I talk about Barbara Jordan and I talk about that speech. Um, it's interesting because it's very convoluted, right? It's heavy. It's very complicated. Um, and so this goes back to kind of, my parents are from Haiti, and coming to America, it was all about the American dream, right? It was about how
Mhm.
they wanted to come here so they could give their children a better life, so they could have a better life. And so that's what they came here for. But the thing is, while their kids, they've created a scenario where I was able to go to school, I got to work in the White House, they still live check to check, right? It's that
Mhm.
weird, very complicated relationship that immigrants have with this country, Black Americans have with this country, where racism is so deep, and it's so systematic. It's so interwoven into everything. And when you come here and you want the best, but you get treated like crap, and so that's kind of what I talk about. I talk about their experience in this country. I talk about what it's meant for them. And, while it's interesting because for them, it's like they feel like they've made it, even though they still live check to check, right? But
Mm.
their kids are doing better, right? They're in a better scenario than they were back in their country. It's enough for them, even with the racism that they have to deal with every day, the bigotry and all the awful isms that they have to deal with. They're still proud of their children, and they try. They're just as Americans as anybody else, right? They're just as patriotic as everybody else, even though the country has not been kind to them.
Yeah. Yep. So we are nearing the end, and so one of the things I asked Karine to do is, what are 3 things we need to do leading into your release date regarding
Ooh.
supporting you in this book?
Yeah, well, get the book, please, please pre-order the book, please, please, please. You can go to my website, KarineJeanPierre.com. That's KarineJean hyphen PIERRE.com. Please pre-order the book. I would love, love, love for you to be able to get this book early, or pre-order it early, get the book, and also come out and see me on my book tour. Let me see if I can pull this up. I have a book tour that kicks off November 4th. The book comes out November 5th. I'll be going to, gosh, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 events in 2 week span. I'll be I kick off my book tour in New York at Barnes and Noble's Upper East Side. Come see me. It starts at 7 November 4th, and then I'm doing an event at NYU Silver, the mixed silver and the Haitian Roundtable, November 6th at 6:30, and then it goes on and on and on. But you can go to my website and get all this information. I'll be going to Virginia, Washington D.C., St. Louis, Massachusetts, Arizona, California, Illinois, and Florida, and Georgia as well, Atlanta, Georgia. And so get a book, please pre-order. Really want to make this to be a bestseller and really want to get this in people's hand. I think it's a story that will move you, that will engage you. And I tell a lot of personal stories, so I give a lot of myself, and I want to share that with people, and hopefully that it will, make a difference to somebody. And then come see me and let me sign your book. So go to my website, pre-order the book, and then check out the book tour.
Yeah. And, Black women are a huge economic stimulator, so we certainly
Right.
like to shop.
That's right.
And so let's, the way this works, and Karine can talk a little bit about this because I just, am trying to be a author in my head.
Yes, you are going to be an author. It's going to happen, Glynda. It's going to happen. I
my
see
head
it
is
in your
moving
future. I
from
see
here to
it.
there,
It's
like
going to happen.
type.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Is that pre-orders help her to be able to be on the New York bestsellers list. And so we need to, when you log off, go straight and pre-order. There's a variety of places to do it. You could go to her site. You can pre-order on Amazon Prime, whatever. And so let's make that happen for her.
Thank
This
you.
has been the ability to do a book talk. You know, oftentimes I see an author is in town, and then I'm like, I miss it. So we're so excited about being able to offer this series where if you could virtually sign books, that would be great. That's the only, semi downside. So next series, we might think that through, where we might, do something where if you sign up, we'll have a book sent to you. So we'll think this through. So that being said, thank you so much for taking the time. She also didn't say, like, she literally is like in the basement so that she didn't have other people, coming down going, what are you doing?
My little 5-year-old, which is bedtime. So yeah, she'd be like, I would be her excuse to not go to sleep. She'd want to come right here and hang out with all of you guys. So
she's like, what are y'all talking about? Like, go to bed. So thank you for sneaking away in your basement to be able to spend this time with us to share a little bit about you, your pathway to the work that you do, and frankly, share some insights on how we can just be more engaged at a time where I think we all want to curl up with a blanket on our couch. But that the importance of resilience, and particularly what makes Black women strong, is that resilience to continue to move this country to higher heights and moving forward. So thank you so much, Karine Jean-Pierre.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Glynda. Thanks everybody for joining. Really appreciate your time. I really do. Thank you.
So as y'all know, we still have, 5 more book series. Last week we had Stacey Abrams, who was absolutely amazing to kick off our author webinar series. So next week we actually have two book readings happening next week. Let me get back to next week, and that includes The Color Girls. And that is Yolanda Caraway, Leah Daughtry, and Mignon Moore will be on camera talking about their book For Color Girls Who Have Considered Politics. That is next Wednesday, September 25th. And on the next night, September 26th, we've got Professor Brittany Cooper and her book Eloquent Rage. Then we move into October, and in October we move to Tuesday nights. So we've been trying to do different nights, knowing that people have obligations. So in October, 3 consecutive Tuesdays, we've got Feminista Jones talking about her recent book, Reclaiming Our Space from Twitter to the Streets. Next, we have Tiffany Dufu, whose book Drop the Ball literally talks about all of us trying to juggle and oftentimes dropping ball. That particular webinar is going to be facilitated and moderated by co-founder Kimberly Taylor-Allen. And then the last of our series is Jamia Wilson, who is the publisher of Feminist Press. So she has published a variety of books. Her latest book is a book series about 50 Black leaders. She's going to spend the evening not only talking about her latest book, but also just talking about, so you're thinking about writing your first book, just how do we get started? How do we start sharing our voices, both as a published author, but also just publishing pieces for blogs and letters to the editor. So we look forward to her ending this series by talking about how do we continue to elevate our voices in writing. So we, again, are thankful that you took an hour of your time out to spend with Higher Heights, but we can't do this work to move this country to higher heights without you. So just signing up, if you weren't a member, you participating in this webinar was affirming your ability to be part of our activist member base. And that is the ability to join webinars like this, to participate in some of our Sunday Brunch series. We have a lot of exciting things happening with our Road to 2020 powered by Black women. And if you are not an active member of our network, you're going to miss out. But we also need your support as an investor in our work. So consider being part of investing and fueling this moment, and you will get a variety of just great information, I think, from Higher Heights. We are relaunching and rebranding in the next 30 days as the political home for Black women's leadership, and you'll be able to see our amazing new websites that we believe that are much more user-friendly for you to be able to navigate to all of the amazing archived resources and a place for you to share and to be engaged. So we truly appreciate your time your investment in your talent in ensuring that Black women's voices are truly valued and engaged in this democracy, from our entry point as voters to us supporting amazing Black women running for office. So thank you for helping Black women lead, and thank you for joining us on the second in a series of conversations with Black women authors. So have a good night, good evening.